Right, so something should happen now. Oh, 28 attendees. I might paste this again. Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear us. This is me, Emma from Stronger Kent Communities, also known as SKC, with Faye Smith here in the top. I'm asking, oh, brilliant. I'm asking people to chat, to type in the chat when they arrive. So brilliant. We've got Pete, Richard, Harry, Susan, Elle, Sarah, Bernie, Natalie, Fab, Sheila, Kyra. Oh, yeah, they're coming thick and fast. That's fab. Pilgrims Hospices, Dover Greeters, Denise. Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to crack on because Faye's made a really jam-packed. Hello, Claire. Hello, Pete from the History Project in Deal. Life Coach Andrew, Red Zebra, Claire. Okay, so we're going to crack on because we've got a really jam-packed schedule today. So the session's called Getting Stories in the Media and Showing Impact Through Storytelling. And this is Faye here. So Faye Smith leads marketing, PR and training consultancy Keep the Fork. It's based in Sheffield, but she's currently on sabbatical in Kent, which is great for us. She offers empowering in-house and open training, consultancy and inspiring speaking events in her expert topics, marketing, presentation, personal branding and public relations. So I'm going to hand over to Faye now.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's fabulous to be with you all. It's so weird that I can't actually see you, but we're on this Demio instead of Zoom. So I have never done a seminar before without being able to see the faces of the people that I'm training. So first time for everything. I've worked in the voluntary and community and faith sector on and off for about 2 decades now, working for some huge charities, one of the biggest children's hospitals in the country, one of the biggest hospices in the country, and some very small charities where we've been doing on everything on a wing and a prayer and a shoestring. So I hope that whatever kind of organisation you represent, voluntary, community or faith sector, I've worked in them all, and I've worked in the commercial sector. So hopefully there will be something here for all of you, and some of the stories that I'm going to be sharing will resonate with you. Now, I'd much prefer it that we could have sound on, but we can't do that. So I'm going to be asking you to use the chat box wherever possible, and we'll take 3 opportunities during this hour for you to ask questions, and you do that through the chat box. So it is a bit weird, but I'm sure we'll all manage together. So great. Okay, so if we can have the, we're talking about influencing through storytelling today for your charity, voluntary or faith sector organisation. And if you just move to the first slide for us, please, Emma. Okay, so what we're going to be covering in the hour is storytelling themes. And we'll be looking at the 10 hooks for storytelling that are going to get people donating, sponsoring, becoming trustees, becoming volunteers, all the things you need them to do within your organisations. Secondly, we're going to be looking at journey and jeopardy. So right here, I hope you've got notepads and pens, but you will also get a recording of this. Here's a note to be making. When I've worked with the national media, and I was fortunate to attend a really brilliant event at Media City in Salford, where the commissioning editors of all the major TV programmes and radio stations were there, and they were talking about what they're looking for when they get pitches for new programmes. And 2 words really stuck out to me there: journey and jeopardy. So they always want to know what journey you've been on and what jeopardy you've been in. So if you think about all the reality TV shows that you've watched and all the commission programs that are happening at the moment, so many of them involve journey and jeopardy. Even if it's that lovely Gareth Malone doing his Military Wives, you know, you would think, how do they create journey and jeopardy out of that? It's not EastEnders, is it? But no. Do you remember the moment where he turns to the camera and says, you know, will Celia be able to lead this group at the Royal Albert Hall? Will she be able, her voice is going, will she be able to get over this terrible cold in order to lead the Military Wives out? you know, and it leaves you hanging and it leaves you waiting for what's next. So what journey you've been on, what jeopardy you've been in, that's true of us as individuals, and I'm sure it's true of many of the people in your charity and group. So the next one, stories and statistics. One of the absolutely critical things for all of us is to be able to tell a story that packs a punch and really gets people connecting with us emotionally, but also to back it up with statistics. So if you forget everything else from today, but you walk away with journey and jeopardy ringing in your ears and stories and statistics, you'll already be able to massively improve the communication of your charity and third sector organisation. So you tell the story, but you back it up with statistics. Let me give you an example. My sister-in-law set up a dyslexia support group and a personal coaching business in York. And she's a very good writer. She used to write careers leaflets and information. She sent the story out to the media and it died a death. Nobody came back to her, not radio, not press, not TV. And she wondered why. So she sent me the story and she said, Faye, I've sent this great story about my new dyslexia institute. She'd bought a franchise and it's died. Nobody's taken up the story. Nobody's interested. What do I need to do? And I looked at the story and I said, there's two massive issues here. Number one, you haven't personalized it. So she hadn't put her own personal story in there. Now she has 3 children, and the youngest of whom became profoundly dyslexic and was really disengaging from school. And it wasn't until she had him tested and realized what was going on, and then found that this program helped him. And because it helped him, she thought she could start that as a franchise to help other young people like her son re-engage with education and achieve their potential, that this business came into being. So there was the personal story, and she hadn't even mentioned that. No mention of her or her son, just the fact that she was starting this franchise. So number one, we personalized it. Then the second thing was, I said, you haven't localized it. There are no statistics in there. So she's based in York, up in the north of England, but she hadn't said how many people in the UK have dyslexia and how many people in York were likely to have dyslexia. She said, but I can't get hold of that information. I said, all you need to do is Google search how many people in the UK, look at the population of York, extrapolate the percentages and come up with an approximation. That's all the media would do. You don't need to do hours of research. You just need to do approximately. As long as you say it's an approximation, you're fine. She made those 2 tweaks of stories and statistics, and the story flew and got everywhere because she got these 2 critical things into the story. We're also then going to cover the 10 hooks to grab the media and your donors' attention, and the key information that journalists need. Now, I'm talking absolutely right now from hugely personal experience, both from me as an individual, because I've had a story that ended up going into the national press about me. So I've been on the receiving end of this. I understand how it feels and how delicate it is. And literally, as I'm speaking to you today, my biggest client is a national anti-trafficking charity based on 5 sites, and we help the survivors of trafficking. And on the 18th of October is Human Trafficking Day and week here in the UK, and I'm getting stories out to the media literally this week with both stories and statistics. So you will be reading a story that went national 2 years ago when a man was found in a shed who had been there trafficked from within the UK for 40 years. He was trafficked at 17 years old and he was found at 58. That man's now 60 years of age and he is in one of our safe houses. We have helped him learn to read and write. He's engaged with a college course, and in the next few weeks he'll be moving out to independent living accommodation for the very first time and re-engaging with another college course in order to gain employment. So that's an incredible story that I'm talking about right now with the local, regional and national media that hopefully you'll be seeing on your TV screens and airwaves over the coming week as a result of me using these techniques for the clients that I'm working with. So if you'd move to the next slide, please, Emma. So how are we going to do this storytelling thing, friends? Well, here's a great quote from The Drum, which is the major marketing magazine. All over the marketing world, brands are being urged to get their stories out there, and that includes third sector organizations. Let's just steal this good practice, because every great brand needs a great story. Only with all these ingredients, a strong plot, a compelling hero, and a powerful enemy, can your brand reach storytelling nirvana, the point where everyone says, what happens next? So that's what we're going to look at doing. Where in your organizations can you create a thread of this strong plot, the compelling hero, and the powerful enemy, so your brand too can reach storytelling nirvana? Just have a think for a moment, and I'd love you to use the chat here. Have a think about some of the TV series that you love, you watch, or you know are hugely popular, that have a strong plot, a compelling hero, and a powerful enemy, and that's what drives their ratings up. So I'd love to hear whether you've got some ideas on that. Who can forget Dirty Den and Angie in EastEnders? Even there, we always have the strong plot, the compelling hero, and the powerful enemy. The only difficulty is for me, as a positive person and somebody of faith, that unfortunately what we know is that tragedy sells. So as I once heard a commissioning editor for some of these soap operas say, happy people do not sell. Because there's no story in happy people. They always have to have the high emotion, the extreme, the tragedy in order to get us all buying, unfortunately. But we've got compelling heroes and strong plots too. So just jot anything in the chat if you think that you can think of some of these major series at the moment that have got all of those ingredients. Oh, right. Okay, good. Any others, Emma? Okay, well, I think I'm not a fan, but Game of Thrones has been massive, hasn't it? And from the people that love watching it, they're saying that too. Okay, so we're going to finish this section on this slide here. Now, this slide is 10 years old. It's a still taken from an advert which broke the mold in British advertising history. It became so incredibly popular, it was taught on marketing masters courses around the UK from this moment on. So it aired in 2010. It aired in December 2010, and it cost £6 million to make. The Daily Mail called it the advert that got Britain sobbing and shopping. Viv Groskop, writing in The Guardian, called it a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. And she said, if you weren't crying, you were to check you had a pulse, male or female. Now, in this advert, which was made by the London-based agency Adam and Eve and cost £6 million to make and lasted 91 seconds on our screen, you see this woman here, played by 9 different actors, from the moment she's laid in her cot to going through her young life, surrounded by friends and family at her 7th birthday party, moving on to university, where she graduates. You see her at her 21st kissing this young man, who you then see her marrying. You see her in her first flat. You see her in her second home. You see her juggling 2 beautiful children and a laptop as she becomes a career woman and a mother. And then you finally see her surrounded by the same friends and family from her 7th birthday party in her 70s, skipping across the fields with her grandchildren and dogs and husband, balding but still with her and loving her and healthy and happy. And that's what got the nation's women sobbing and shopping, because women make 80% of the purchasing decisions globally. That advert got us by the emotional heartstrings and was so popular that it soared the ratings of the advertiser and caused them to have huge increase in their profitability that Christmas. Can anyone say in the chat box what the retailer was that broke the mold with that advert 10 years ago? And the soundtrack to that advert was Billy Joel's She's Always a Woman to Me, sung by Five Dangerfield, which took that back to the #1 slot in the charts that week. And that advert was downloaded over 100,000 times and watched as a video the first weekend.
Debenhams from Pete, but we've got a winner already from Andy, John Lewis.
Okay, it was the John Lewis advert. Well done, Andy. John Lewis broke the mold, and now is part of people's Christmas expectation. Everyone's wondering, what's the John Lewis advert going to be? It hits the papers, it gets talked about, it gets downloaded, it gets its own hashtags, and they have mastered this secret of using emotion to drive sales. That advert put John Lewis's online sales up 47% that first Christmas that it was aired, because women were sitting on their settees at night with a glass of Chardonnay and an iPad, and were dangerous because they were sitting there sobbing over that advert, the life that they'd wanted but perhaps didn't get, and they were ordering the carefully chosen merchandise that was throughout that woman's life that was on that advert. So it worked incredibly well for them. Would you like to just move on a slide, please?
We've had Harry Potter, and we had another one as well, Harry Potter and Downton Abbey. Good story.
Oh, interesting. The compelling hero and powerful enemy. Good one. Good one. Okay, so I'm going to take any questions now before I dive into the 10 hooks that the media are looking for. And what I'd like you to do in this section, if you've got pad and paper or keyboard with you, is as I'm explaining what these 10 hooks are, you will get a recording of this, but it would be really good if every time I mention one of the hooks, you're thinking about how this applies to your third sector organisation, how you could use it in your hospice, in your charity shop, in your parent carer forum, whatever it is. Think, right, is there a story within my organisation, from a staff member, from a volunteer, from a donor, from a trustee, from a member of our management team, from a client, from a service user? Is there a story out there that I could use this hook for? Because that's what's going to get you a PR and marketing plan that you can use to really maximize these hooks. So any questions so far, fire away. Yeah. And Emma will spot them in the chat.
Do you want me to move forward?
Yep, okay. We haven't got any immediate questions. So here is #1, avalanche about to roll. Now, if you'd move on to the next slide with this one. Okay, so you imagine you're on a skiing holiday, and up ahead you've got friends and family, and the ice wall's crumbling, and you can spot an avalanche is coming, but they're laughing and chatting and they haven't noticed. That is this critical first way of telling your emotional story. What have you noticed? What danger have you spotted that's about to come that other people are unaware of? And you're the one that's effectively whistleblowing. You're going, hey, guys, wait a second. There's an avalanche about to roll and you haven't seen it, but listen to me because I've seen it. How can you apply that to your organisation? Here's a guy that's applying it to his organisation. Now, I think every other slide has got someone from the third sector. These are all clients of mine, and these are all stories that we've told that have got them into the local, regional and national media. So this is a guy called Arnie. Arnie runs the third biggest independent taxi company in the United Kingdom, which is based in my home city of Sheffield. It's called City Taxis. And Arnie spotted an avalanche about to roll, and that avalanche's name was Uber. Now, if you're running an independent taxi company, Uber are an enormous threat to you, but they're moreover an enormous threat to Arnie's 2,000 local drivers, because those people have things that Uber don't. Uber pay their taxes in Luxembourg, what tax they pay, and are headquartered in Silicon Valley. They can employ people as drivers from anywhere, and those drivers do not have to be enhanced DBS checked. Now, if you are a local taxi company, your drivers have enhanced DBS checks, they have customer care training, they pay their taxes locally, they do their shopping and spend their money locally, as do the organisation itself, and they're headquartered in Sheffield. So if you lose your mobile phone, it will be found in the city in which you lost it. So Arnie wanted to wave the hand and say, hang on, guys, if you don't start buying local, which may be an issue for many of you, certainly is an issue here where I'm based now in Deal on the high street. All our campaigns are about buying local, spending your money locally, looking after local retailers so they can look after you, especially in lockdown. So that's the kind of thing you need to be thinking about. What avalanche have you spotted that others may not be aware of, that you can say, hang on, if we don't make these changes and we don't address these needs, that there's going to be an avalanche about to roll. COVID's a massive avalanche about to roll, isn't it? And that's why we've got so many northern cities now being locked down, because they're spotting the avalanche and taking action. Okay, next slide, please, Emma. Now, we're almost back here to Journey and Jeopardy. This is David versus Goliath, the great age-old story of the little guy versus the big guy. Okay, if you'd move on to our story there. So let me introduce you to Kirsty, my friends. Here is Kirsty with this lovely baby here. Kirsty's here in the Philippines at an orphanage, and Kirsty's working for the anti-trafficking charity now, the one that I've just mentioned to you about, that I'm doing the story about this very week. Kirsty now runs our Scotland and North of England operation, but you see her here in her late teens, taking a gap year after university where she was training to become a social worker. And Kirsty didn't at that time know what kind of social work she wanted to move into, but she went to the Philippines, and her life-changing moment was when a woman came out of hospital, and she was on the hospital steps, Kirsty was at that time, going in to look after some babies who were going to be adopted, and this woman had given birth to twins by cesarean section, and she pushed one of the babies into Kirsty's arms and, weeping in front of her, said, I cannot afford both my babies. I have had to have a cesarean. I have had to pay money for this that I don't have. Would you buy one of my babies from me so that I can pay my hospital bill? And that's the baby. And at that moment, Kirsty's life completely changed. They helped this woman. Of course, they supported her to keep the babies. And she thought, I need to work with children and help other women in this woman's situation back in the UK. Kirsty ended up becoming a social worker and working, for those of you who've heard of the Rotherham scandal about young people who were sexually exploited within South Yorkshire, Kirsty ended up helping those young women, and then she moved to our anti-trafficking charity, where she heads up, as I've said, the Northern and Scotland operation now, and she works with women and their children and babies who have been trafficked, and she is an enormous asset to us. But it all started at that crucial moment when she was a student outside a hospital being asked to buy a woman's baby. So her story's been so powerful. We've got that local, regional and national. But here's the David and Goliath thing. Human trafficking is one of the top 3 illegal trades in the entire world. And Kirsty is one tiny cog in an enormous wheel against the massed forces of the traffickers, who see women like the ones Kirsty helps as human cash tills. And I have to be incredibly sensitive when I tell these stories. We can't take photos of these women. Only occasionally can we even take a photo from behind. We can't talk about their countries of origin. I can't even give their ages often. We can't talk about the cities in which we have the safe houses that they've been placed in, because literally we're talking life and death here. We don't want them to be recaptured by their traffickers. Their lives could be at stake. So we have to be incredibly sensitive. That often ties my hands in the stories I can tell, but I can always tell Kirsty's story, and we can always talk about how we are the little David versus the might of the trafficking Goliaths, especially in anti-trafficking week, and we'll come back to that later. So next slide, please, Emma. So your third emotional hook, and I know you can all do this, is aspirations and beliefs. There will be values and culture of your organisation There will be values and culture perhaps held by the founder of your charity or organisation, something that's happened to them, something that's made them want to help others in a similar situation. So here we have the late, great Nelson Mandela, a man who was known for his aspirations and beliefs, honed in Robben Island prison and brought to bear on an entire country when he was released and became the first president, Black president of South Africa. So let's localize that with another story, please, Emma. So here is one of the most amazing and inspiring women I've ever had the privilege to meet, and she has very much helped me in my life. Her name is Sandra Howard, and Sandra sadly has now passed away fairly recently in the last few years. But Sandra founded a charity called Fable, and Fable stands for a Better Life with Epilepsy. And it was one of only 2 epilepsy support charities in the whole of the UK. But Sandra's aspirations and beliefs was that no person with epilepsy should have a poor quality of life. And why did Sandra get that belief? Well, Sandra got that belief from her own son, Gareth, because Gareth was having 45 seizures a day as a teenager. And then one day, Sandra was sitting watching a programme which some of you may remember if you're my age and above, which is Tomorrow's World. And she saw one of the Tomorrow's World presenters talking about vagal nerve stimulation and how that can help people with epilepsy. Right there and then, Sandra thought, I will see if that could help my son. So, as a campaigning mum, she went straight to the hospital, talked to his consultants and said, do you think this new treatment could help my son? He said, yes, I think it could. But a vagal nerve stimulator costs £2,000 to have implanted. Sandra said, I will fundraise that money. And off she went and started doing everything from cake bake sales to fun runs. And I'm sure some of you in small grassroots charities will be doing exactly that same thing and could well be how your charities were founded. So Sandra started doing that and managed to fundraise the £2,000 so that her son could have this treatment. Except that the manufacturers, who were American, of this VNS heard about Sandra's feats and decided they would give Gareth a vagal nerve stimulator because they were so impressed with what she'd done. So Sandra was then left with £2,000 that her son didn't need because he was going to get this treatment. And so she decided she would found a charity in which she could donate that £2,000 to help someone else. And at the time of her death, Sandra's charity had raised over £3 million for people with epilepsy and had become one of the #1 support organisations for those with epilepsy around the whole of the UK. Now, my daughter Gabby, I mentioned the national story earlier. My daughter Gabby was 11 when she was diagnosed with a form of epilepsy called non-epileptic attack disorder, which is brought on by trauma. And very sadly, Gabby passed away when she was 12 and a half. And it was Sandra's team who very much helped me in my grief to get over that whole start to deal with, you never get over a bereavement like that, but to start to deal with the diagnosis and then the passing away of my daughter. So this is a charity which I'm immensely fond of, that do the most amazing work, and their aspirations and beliefs are that everyone should have a great life. Now, Gareth went on to reduce down to 1 fit occasionally instead of 45 fits a day, and has actually become a salsa dancer amongst many other things. So he got that quality of life that Sandra aspired to for others. The next slide, please. So here we are. We are now on slide 4, your hook 4. And again, every single one of you within your third sector organisation will have strong personal stories which you can tell, which will cause people to sit up and take notice in the way you need them to, for the longevity of your charities and organisations, for donations, for fundraising, for all of those critical things for you guys. So here we are, personal stories. Now, even the politicians know about this. And if you think back to the election in which Gordon Brown was fighting to keep Labour in power, at that time, you had Cameron and Brown who were out constantly on the streets, going around Britain, trying to connect with the population. And it became known in marketing circles as the I Met a Man syndrome, because what both of them would constantly be saying to the TV cameras in order to make their policies real and rooted in people's experiences is they would say, well, I met a man in Motherwell and he was saying, and they would then tell that person's personal story. And then you would get the other party saying, well, I met a nurse in Carlisle and what she said to me was, and then again, they would relate that personal story, because what they understand, and obviously they've got spin doctors and communications experts and marketing experts all working on their policies and trying to work out how to ground them so that people understand them and do what needs to be done. And we're seeing that right now at the moment with COVID, is that personal stories, when you don't talk about just statistics, but you ground it in stories of what people need to do and how they need to make changes, whether it's to their health or their lifestyle or whatever, is all about personal stories. So let me introduce you here to a lovely lady called Wendy Holmes. Now, Wendy's nickname is Mama Wendy. And when Wendy was 17 years old, she went to the City Hall in Sheffield, her home city, to hear a missionary called Gladys Aylward, who'd actually led orphan children out through the mountains of Germany to escape the Nazis. Very much a kind of a Sound of Music story. And Mama Wendy, as was then a 17-year-old girl, said, one day I am going to help children, like Gladys Aylward did. And she is now an official mama to 12 different orphanages, mainly based in the Philippines and Africa. And she runs a charity shop in Sheffield, which generates all the money that goes direct to those 12 orphanages, all of which she's personally worked in, all of which she knows, so that the money's going direct to the people that need it most and the goods. And so when I got to know Wendy and was helping her get her very strong and inspiring story out to the media as she opened this charity shop, we were telling the stories not only of her, but also of the children that she's helping. So this little boy here, you can see in the middle photograph, is called Adam. And Adam was given some medication, which unfortunately was wrong. He was misdiagnosed and made his legs grow backwards in the way you can see there. But all Adam ever wanted to be able to do was to play football. And thanks to the money that was donated by Wendy's charity shop, here you now see Adam able to play football for the first time, and the whole crowd of all his village gathered around him, supporting him as he is able to kick a ball for the first time. A really lovely and strong story. And again, that's gone local, regional and national. Next slide, please, Emma. Okay, so our fifth theme for your amazing storytelling, emotional tactics, and I hope you're jotting down notes and thinking about how we can apply all of these in your organisations. So right here we've got Mary. I worked with Rotherham Hospice for several years, handling their communications. Now, the great thing when I get to work with larger organisations who have larger budgets to create larger results, Rotherham Hospice, just to put it into context, has to raise 2.3 million a year in donations to keep going. The Children's Hospital in Sheffield that I worked with for almost a year, covering maternity leave for their fundraising and marketing team, they have to raise 3.2 million. So that's just to give you an idea of the kind of money that's at stake here and the importance of getting this communication strategy right when you've got to raise these kinds of vast sums of money. But again, we talk about raising 2.3 million. That's a number, it's a statistic, but where's the stories behind that? Well, here's one of the stories that we did. And there were days when we were getting out 3 stories a week to the local press from Rotherham Hospice, and that was really helping them push their amazing stories out into the media. And what we did there is we worked closely with their fundraising team, and we would constantly be going in with these 10 hooks and saying, here are the 10 hooks, who's got a story about this? We'd even work, and here's a tip, we'd even do training sessions with their reception staff. So one example here, this is not the one shown on the slide, but a woman walked into reception with an envelope filled with cash. I think she'd raised £150, and it was her golden wedding anniversary, and they wanted to raise money. I think a friend of theirs had passed away in the hospice, and her and her husband didn't need anything. They said it was their golden wedding, but they had a whip round effectively at their golden wedding for Rotherham Hospice, and they raised £150. They walked into reception with the envelope of cash. Now, that story could have died a death had not the woman on reception heard about what we were doing. We'd been in talking to her, having a chat, and she said, "Oh, may I just take your phone number and email address? I'm sure our fundraising and marketing team would love to talk to you about this story and hear more about why you wanted to support the hospice in this way." The woman said, "Yeah, no problem at all." All that we needed was a phone number or an email address, and we were able to connect with that woman, get a wonderful picture, get pictures of their golden wedding that they'd had taken, and them supporting it, which allowed other people to think, "Oh, I've got my silver wedding, golden wedding, ruby wedding coming up. I could do that for Rotherham Hospice." So that created more donations coming through from other people taking that one good idea into their own hearts, but only because they'd read about it. So those were examples. Again, we'd work with the lottery team to be able to talk about people who'd won the lottery. So anyone that was happy to say, "Yes, I've won," and the maximum prize was £10,000. So I guess people weren't worried that they'd won several million and were going to be tapped up by everyone they'd ever known for large sums of cash with emotional heart pleas. They were happy to talk about having won the money and thinking it was all a hoax or a joke, or they'd never won a penny in their lives. And this was wonderful. So again, using your internal team to bring the stories through to you. So let's ground it back down to Mary's story here. So this is Mary. Mary works in one of the Rotherham Hospice charity shops. She does half a day a week for us. And Mary loves to do ironing. Now, I don't know whether you love ironing. I can't say it's one of my favourite things, but Mary loves ironing. And Mary's been ironing since she was 13 years old. So Mary takes in the clothes. Once they've been laundered, Mary does all the pressing and gets them out on the shop floor and talks to customers for us half a day a week. Now, I don't know what you're hearing and seeing in the media about aging and dementia and, you know, people turning up their toes and not getting out of the house and all of this. Now, appreciating this was pre-COVID. But Mary is not that person. She is challenging the assumptions about aging. But what I would love you to do in the box, and Emma will tell me if you're doing it, I would just love you to take a look at Mary's photo and tell me how old you think Mary is. One of our lovely volunteers, half a day a week in our charity shop. So just jot in the box there how old you think Mary is. And I'm going to have a swig of tea while you do it.
Faye, that people are finding the stories really powerful, uplifting. Someone's busy sobbing. So there's quite a lot of comments saying, yeah, it's all great. There's lots of 80s, 90s, 78's the youngest so far. We've got an 83, an 88, a 79.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the lovely comments. I'm sorry I made someone cry. These are emotional stories. What can I say? I'm not crying because I've been living with these stories. I've been living with them for years, and I have to maintain some kind of distance in order to be able to tell these stories to the media. And can you imagine how difficult it was for me 7 years ago when it was my story that was hitting the national press and I got reporters camping on my doorstep? But it does mean that when I'm dealing with some super sensitive cases, I've worked with people who've been trafficked, domestic violence, you know, some horrendous stories, and I have sat and wept when I've taken my clients' stories over what they've been through. So I get it, and I'm not doing this deliberately, but in order for you to connect with your audience, we do have to start tapping into the emotion of all of this. So back to Mary's story. Well, she's such an inspiration to me. As each decade of my life goes by and I have a party and mark another decade, I think, you know, what will old age bring? I'm sure for all of us. Mary in this photo is 99 years old. 99 years old and still ironing, and she's been ironing since she was 13. Can you imagine still wanting to iron at 99? No, not me. And still working at 99, and she lives independently on her own at home and does everything for herself. I mean, what an awesome woman. Who doesn't want to read that story in the newspaper? That that went everywhere. We got the TV wanting Mary's story. My only problem with Mary's story is that she got so much attention when we did this story that she started getting panicky about all the attention. And then in the end, she pulled out of the TV stuff, which is a shame because TV is usually our holy grail in terms of hearts and minds and donations and getting to such a wide reach of people. But it all started getting too much for her. And she said no to the TV cameras who wanted to film her 100th birthday party with us celebrating along with her in the hospice.
We've got people saying
as
she's,
a massive thank you,
you
to
know,
her.
they're really surprised about her age, and that volunteering is good for you.
Yes, amen. Well, it keeps you young, do you not think? Absolutely. You know, and we know from all the reports now about lockdown and you know, my mum's 84, she was shielding and you know, it's so difficult and missing the hugs and the touch and everything else, you know, getting out, being active and doing things for others. It's not possible to be wholly altruistic. We know this. All the studies show that we get something from giving. In fact, there was an amazing about 3:45 yesterday, if you want to get hold of it on Radio 4, there was a brilliant program about how we get so much from giving on their digital program. Really good. So let's move on to story number 5. So this is my least favorite because it's somewhat negative. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I'm just going to pause a moment here to remind us that in terms of why people buy, here's another critical thing that you need to write down, or to note. So so far we've had journey and jeopardy, haven't we? Number 1. We've had stories and statistics, number 2. And now I'm going to give you fear and greed. Another pair of words, a third pair of words that really sum up this session, fear and greed. So those are the only 2 ways that advertisers ever appeal to you, the buying public, to get you to buy. Every time you watch a TV advert or hear an advert on the radio now, what I want you to think is, are they appealing to fear or greed? So in the chat box, every time you see an advert for insurance, what are they appealing to for your buying drivers? Are they appealing to fear or greed? Jot it in the chat box. You've got a 50-50, hey?
We've got some fears at the moment.
Yep, 100%. Well done, everybody. It's fear. Every insurance advert you see is appealing to fear. What if I don't have holiday insurance? What if I don't have car insurance? What if the roof caves in under a flood? All about fear. Now, how about every car advert you see? Fear or greed?
We've got a luxury. Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so car adverts are appealing to our wanting to keep up with the Joneses, to our aspirational lifestyle. And again, like the John Lewis advert, you now watch the car adverts and see, you can see the demographic they're appealing to, you can see the gender they're appealing to, you can see the lifestyle they're appealing to. You know, you'll see large SUVs and they've got 15 bikes and 3 surfboards and a canoe on them, and the family are all going off healthy and happy, having a wonderful time. It's all about greed for the lifestyle, greed for the stuff. Sorry, can you just go back to that? Okay, so here's the story for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay, FUD for short. Remember FUD. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. If you can raise those things, you will get people watching, listening, engaging, and taking keyboard warriors to their keyboards on Twitter and Facebook and all the rest of it. You think what's happening in the country at the moment over COVID? Classic fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So here is a more positive spin on that, because this is the negative one. This is the one I struggle with the most. I don't like engendering in people fear, uncertainty, and doubt unless it's for a good cause. So this is a wonderful woman who's one of my incredible inspirations, Sophie Maxwell. I've been mentoring Sophie for many years. Sophie was 15 when, and again, I should have said earlier at the top of the show, as they say, all of these stories that I'm sharing with you have been in the media, and I've been given permission to share all of them. So I would hate you to think that if you engage with me, your own story, however confidential, is going to be splattered or told in a seminar to someone else next week. Sophie's written a book called I think it's the £1.80 sandwich. Yes, you can see her holding her book in the other slide. This is her biography, incredibly powerful. Childhood abuse led to her being absent from school from 15 and truanting, leaving school at 16 and becoming homeless, falling into drink and drugs and a hostile lifestyle. But then she re-engaged with education when she walked into a local college in my city of Sheffield and asked, she got no GCSEs, asked to get back into education, and the college administrator on reception said, no, I'm sorry, if you've no GCSEs, we can't take you on here. But as it happened, a tutor was walking through the corridor and saw her and said, you don't look okay. Are you okay? And she shook her head, and he said, do you want to come for a sandwich? At that point, this young woman hadn't eaten for 3 days. That was the first food she'd had for 3 days. And he bought her a £1.80 sandwich. I'm welling up even thinking about it because I know her and I know her story. And that £1.80 sandwich changed her life. And that's why she's dedicated her book to that tutor who later died of stomach cancer, but in time for him to turn her life around and become her most powerful role model and encourager. She not only re-engaged with education and got her GCSEs, she got a degree in sport from Sheffield Hallam University and became an athlete running for Yorkshire. This is the young woman who smoked and drank and did drugs, was running for Yorkshire, and her mentor became Dame Kelly Holmes, who she connected with on Twitter, who she had a poster of on her hostel wall all through her hostel days. And they've connected on Twitter, and now she works with Dame Kelly Holmes, and she runs the Really Neat Academy for young people not in employment, education and training all over the Yorkshire region, and has been taken on by Richard Branson's organisation and has held a platform with Sam Branson, Richard Branson's son, in the One World conference and flown to Hong Kong. Incredible young woman and story. And so when she's talking to people, she's talking about the fear, the uncertainty and doubt that young people who are neat face, and the doubt that they will ever achieve anything that's constantly being brought into the national media. And she explains how she can reach them and turn their lives around with her story and her techniques of working with them, which are completely off the wall and different, but really powerful use of fear, uncertainty and doubt, but in a more positive way. Okay, next slide, please. So this is your next hook, and that is how-to tips. Everyone loves a how-to. We all love a hack, an easy way of learning lessons from somebody else, so that we don't need to make the mistakes they did, or that we can leap ahead, get some top tips. That's why you're here today. My top tips for getting engagement. So this is Jodie Marshall. Again, I've had the privilege of mentoring Jodie since she set up her business 13 years ago now, and she runs a social enterprise, as Sophie does, the woman you've just seen. Jodie's social enterprise is Mind Apart Theatre Company, and she doesn't take grants. She does, it's all entirely funded work and commercial work that she does, contract work with local authorities. Again, she works with NEETs, and she does loads of how-to tips. So she's constantly working with young people who are disengaged from education or who have had severe difficulties in education. She does a lot of work about sex education, about relationship education, about personal safety. And she does loads of how-to tips and goes in to schools and does this work, brings the how-to tips alive through drama as well. And we do a lot of anti-bullying stuff, and we do a lot of her tips in the newspapers to help the newspapers have fact boxes with her tips in, telling stories of young people who've achieved through the work that she does and through the medium of drama and performing arts. Okay, great. Next one, please. So that was number 7. This is number 8, Glitz and Glam. So we've got 10 minutes to go, need to speed up. So Glitz and Glam, this is where you get anybody you can who carries with them their own kind of kudos. It could be anyone that's got a chain of office. You get the mayor in, you get a local council leader in, you might get a sports personality in, you might get a local celebrity in, a son or daughter of the city in, somebody that will draw attention to your cause because they're backing you. So again, when I worked with the Sheffield Children's Hospital charity, we were fortunate enough that our patrons were people like Katie Melua, the singer, and we had some of the names just gone out of my head, but some of the amazing sports people who've come out of Sheffield, the rugby players, the cricket players. We also had Jessica Ennis-Hill, which was fabulous as a patron. So we were able to use their celebrity following to generate interest and a following for us. And we always used to have a celebrity golf day. Dan Walker, there you go, you see, came back to me. Dan Walker, so he'd always hold a golf day for us every year with bags of celebrities in. Now, I appreciate some of you may have tiny grassroots charities. There may only be a handful of you and you're all volunteers. But again, maybe you can get the council leader or the mayor in, or maybe you've got some contacts within your own family or friendship circles where you can get somebody coming into your organisation that will bring their own glitz and glam. So this bottom slide shows again, an incredible inspiration to me and an amazing woman. This is a lady called Julie Kenny. She was recently made a dame for her services to one of the biggest stately homes in Europe. It's got the longest frontage of any stately home in Europe, in Rotherham of all places, Wentworth Woodhouse. And Julie is a Rotherham girl. And she was also, you see her here, that funky outfit that she's got on with the plume and the lace jabot and everything else, that is the outfit of the High Sheriff of South Yorkshire. So if you remember the Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood tales, it's still the same office now. It's come down from medieval times, but now a woman can hold that office. Hooray. Julie wasn't the first woman ever to hold that office, but she was the first High Sheriff of Nottingham. She's the Queen's representative in South Yorkshire, rather. She was the first one ever to come from a council house background. And again, Julie's story's gone out to the press. She was 16 when she ran away from home with £40 in her pocket and wanted to get as far away from her life in Rotherham as she could. She became a young carer of her siblings with an alcoholic stepfather. And again, I used to work with Sheffield Young Carers, and we brought Julie in as a patron and a spokesperson for young carers because she'd been one. The High Sheriff of South Yorkshire, the Queen's representative, had herself been a young carer at 16, had a breakdown, run away on a train, became a secretary in a legal practice, and through one person in that legal practice, her boss investing in her, retrained as a lawyer, built a company from scratch, and her company was turning over many millions of pounds and exporting to 65 countries when she sold it to become the chairperson of Wentworth Woodhouse Trust and bring that building back to the nation, which is what she got her dameship for. So if you follow Wentworth Woodhouse, if you're in any kind of stately homes, buildings, anything like that, we've been doing a huge amount of work for them, and one of my former associates is doing all their social media, but that needs to generate many millions of pounds to restore that building. We got a grant from the National Trust for £10 million just for the roof, to make the roof watertight. So you can imagine what the scale is there. But here is Julie coming in to bring her kudos to some awards. Okay, so in the last 6 minutes, national but local. If there's something happening nationally that you can bring a local flavour to, then hit your local media with the offer, hey, this is a national issue, but here we've got a local story about it. Everyone loves the local angle on a national issue. Obviously, COVID's enormous at the moment, but you can think of plenty of other things. Here, this is Red Nose Day. So I've got one of my clients they were a commercial client, but they were doing a huge amount of fundraising for Red Nose Day. But again, that was the Red Nose Day where it was onesies was the theme. But we got that photo taken 48 hours before Red Nose Day and out to the press the day before Red Nose Day, talking about what we were going to be doing that year. So that on Red Nose Day itself, we may have been the only photo they had ready on the day, because everyone else was busy taking photos that they sent in after the fact. But we were ready and had the photo stage in advance. And again, just this week, I'm sending out a Christmas story for our charity, our anti-trafficking charity, about the woman who'll be cooking Christmas lunches for our trafficking survivors. And Tuesday, today, we're mocking up Christmas with the tree, the tinsel and the turkey, and getting that story out this week. Okay, next one. And finally, tip number 10, topical. So this was Food Bank at Christmas, so it was hugely topical. I was doing a story about people not eating at Christmas and how swamped the food bank was being. Took that story to the local media and they were so aghast. This was several years ago now. Sadly, it's become more commonplace. The editor was so amazed that people were not going to be having Christmas dinner and that we were creating hampers for them for Christmas, that he actually put that on the front page. And the food bank that I was representing, which was actually my own church's food bank in Sheffield, received donations of 10 tons of food in the following 48 hours as a result of that story hitting the front page, as did the other food bank featured. And again, that would have blessed all the food banks because it's creating interest from everybody. Okay, next slide. Topical and seasonal. So Christmas, I'm afraid, is coming, friends. And if you can get your stories out in advance, mock them up with whatever your Christmas story is. From the 1st of December to the 25th, everyone's just interested in Christmas. And if you can make them fun and use all the props, you will get out there. Yes, I can get my clients wearing silly hats they don't like, powers of persuasion. And these are the 3 fundraising team of the Children's Hospital, where we were doing the elf appeal a couple of years ago. So again, happy smiling faces with the kit on will make the day. So last couple of minutes, here you've got what difference will it make? This was the personal story of one of my clients, which hit the front page of Woman and Home. She runs this adorable sweet shop and pottery painting shop in North Norfolk, and her story hit the front page. It was a personal story about a marriage breakdown and a new life start in Norfolk, and that got her, she reckons, 800 new customers. Now you think what 800 new donors could do for your organisation or volunteers. Okay, next one. And this is Andrea Chattan. She runs a children's charity called Unravel, or it's not a charity, it's a non-profit called Unravel. And she has a series of books called The Blinks, which help children in school. She's a psychologist, and she's an emotional and behavioural psychologist. And I've worked with her to get her profile so high. She is now the BBC spokesperson on This Morning, On the Couch with Holly and Phil, the whole works. An amazing, amazing woman. And she's written a series of books for children to help them get over anger, stress, fear, doubt, worry. And those books, we got her in the Telegraph recently. She sold more books that weekend. She was in on the Saturday Telegraph, more books that weekend than she normally would do in months. So if you manage to get your stories out there, you will see the rewards. Okay, next. So how can you use all of this? Just to wrap up, last couple of slides here. You can use them in press releases, and I've spoken to here the Kent Online and to the Deal Press. When it's charities, they don't expect them to be written beautifully. They're happy just to take an email pitch from you. This is what I think you might be interested in. Profile pieces, features. You might write a viewpoint about something that matters to you and your cause. You could be the expert on, I don't know, like Home Start, I think, are on the call today. You could be the expert on vulnerable families. Mark yourself out as the expert and do regular articles. You could write letters to your local paper. How about nominating yourself for an award entry and using these emotional stories for that? You can use them for funders. You can use them for partner agencies. Tell the stories. And in social media, you can do tweets, and pieces on Facebook about these
Sheila's just asking
hooks.
what's
Okay,
her
next.
name. I think she means for the lady in the last slide.
Andrea Chattan, and her her business charity is Unravel, and Unravel Child Emotional Behavioural Programme. But if you look up Unravel and Andrea Chattan, and her articles online as well about the blinks are the characters. They're all on Amazon, downloadable off Amazon. Okay, and then what does the journalist need to know? So if you are pitching these stories, and I'm hoping to run another event if you would like one about how to pitch, where we'll actually do this and maybe even get a journalist along, you need to answer your 5 W's and your H. Who is the story about? What are you doing? Where are you doing it? When are you doing it? Why would anyone be interested? And that is the critical thing. You've got to make people interested. Why would anyone else be interested in your fundraiser or your skydive or your program? And then finally, how can people get hold of you? Always, always, always make sure you put a mobile number on there, even if in brackets you put for press use only, if you don't want it going out to everyone else. Okay, and then finally, when it comes to journalists, do engage with them on social media. Follow them on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. A lot of your local radio stations, TV stations will all have their own Facebook pages, so find and like those. Start looking at what they're interested in. They usually post in the morning what they'll be covering as topics in the day, and you might be able to leap on that and engage with your local journalists on social media channels. Okay, next one, which I think is the last one. Oh, photos. Forgot to say. Oh, goodness. Hope you're all still with me. You've got to send out great photos if you're going out to the media. These were 2 photos I inherited from a yoga social enterprise I was doing work with, and she wanted to be on the front page of Good Housekeeping with these. Can't do it, folks. They're just not good enough quality. The people she's training look pretty scared. The carpet's dominating the shot. And I'm afraid the head and shoulders picture of the wonderful Farah here looks like she's standing against a wall in front of a firing squad. So let's just show the next photos. That was a £50 photo shoot with someone that was just setting up their own photography business. That got her in Good Housekeeping magazine in a feature about women who turned a hobby into a business. Okay, next. And these are the kind of headshots that we send out of our clients. And next, if you can send a video out with it as well, even more powerful. People on average are watching 32 videos a month. You'll get a 90% increased click-through rate onto your website if there's video on there. And they reckon that 1 minute of video is worth 1.8 million words. So it's really important to use video if you can, and is increasing people's stay on rate on your website by 2 minutes. Okay, next. And this is, I think, the last but one slide. When it comes to emotional marketing, if they're not crying, they're not buying. And that's crying with happiness or crying with sadness. But what I mean by that is, if you are not accessing people's emotions with the way you're marketing to them, then you are missing the most important way to engage with your audience. Okay, and finally, if you'd like to engage with me further from this, you can message me. You can message me on Twitter at Faye Fork or Keep Your Fork PR. You can engage with me on Facebook. We've got a Keep Your Fork Facebook page, so you can message me through that. You can find me on LinkedIn. We can work with you, and really what we're unique about in my consultancy is that we love one-to-one empowering consultancy with chief execs, management teams, trustee boards, or with individuals within your organization who need helping hand to set up a PR and marketing plan that you then run with. So I love giving people, teaching people how to fish rather than giving them a fish. But you can connect with Emma and she will tell you a lot more about what we do. And I believe there's some funding. So Emma, I'm sorry, I've overrun a little bit. Emma, do you want to finish off and then maybe some questions?
Just to say that was really impressive. Thank you, Faye. Very but really engaging. And we've got some comments saying thank you so much, Faye. It's been extremely helpful and inspiring. Denise says it's thought-provoking and extremely helpful. Super helpful from Claire and interesting. And a big thank you from Ben. We just wanted to flag up that we have at SKC a limited budget for one-to-one coaching. And so if anyone has a time-limited marketing project and would like someone some one-to-one coaching and you're not in a position to pay, we may be able to help. So please get in touch. And my email is emma@strongerkentcommunities.org.uk. I wanted to say we'd also love to have Faye back as an online trainer. So if people are interested in further developing today's taster session, then please let me know. Again, emma@strongerkentcommunities.org.uk. And if we get enough takers, then we may be able to run a session. And then lastly, I wanted to flag up our 2 upcoming sessions. We've got a social media session next Tuesday, and following that, the following Tuesday, we've got making videos for social media. So please either get in touch with me. They're also on Eventbrite at the moment, and you can book. We've got a message from Trish saying, when you write an article, pitching it as whether you speak or you speak about someone else. I don't know, does that make sense to you, Faye?
I think she's talking about third person versus first person. So I would be recommending there you do what I did over the man we're calling Stephen's story, the guy that was locked in the shed for 40 years as someone who'd been trafficked. What I did was I introduced it in the third person and then talked about Stephen in the third person, but with quotes from him in the first person. So I said, you know, it's anti-trafficking day. Stephen's story is thankfully rare, but 45% of people who are trafficked are actually trafficked from within the UK, and people don't know that. Here is Stephen's story. And then I say, you know, Stephen was found in a shed at 58 years old, now 60, and then I go into his own words. So you can talk about it from that angle, but like I say, the really great news when you're a third sector organisation, and particularly the smaller ones, is the media don't expect you to have PR professionals writing journalist-ready copy in the way that they might do if I'm representing either a big hospice or a large commercial organisation. They're happy just to take a few words from you that cover the 5 W's and the H and say what the story is, and then they will come back to you and they will write it from interviewing you and the client wherever possible. So again, the difficulty is when your client doesn't want further interviews, which is the stage that I'm at with Stephen. So immediately I got that story out yesterday, I've got requests from journalists wanting to talk to Stephen himself. So that will be for the charity to negotiate today, but I think Stephen will probably say no to that.
Claire's asking, as a small local organisation, what type of media, local, national, etc., do you recommend approaching mainly?
When you're a small local organisation, with media at the moment, the watchwords are hyper-local. So I'll give you an example again. The editor of the Sheffield Star, which is one of the larger local papers in the UK and part of the Johnson Press Group, would say, and has said to me, if it doesn't say the word Sheffield in the subject line, she won't even open the email. So that's how hyper-local you need to be when you're appealing to local initially. So always start local, and start local for 2 reasons. One, it's an easier win usually, and 2, local stories can get picked up by the nationals. So when my sad story of my bereavement hit the front page of my local paper, that wasn't because it was me, that was because the story was so sad. That then got, my local paper was being followed, that particular journalist was being followed by the Daily Mail, the Daily Express, and so on. So when she wrote the article, actually I ended up writing that article, but she printed it, that then got picked up by all the nationals. So getting your story in local, don't think it won't go any further, because it might, and then you can aid it going further by then taking it to the nationals as well and tweeting it out. Any and so questions?
Oh, Claire says yes, makes sense, thank you. So I think that's it from everyone. So thanks very much, Faye, and we hope to see you again. And any more questions, just get in touch with me, emma@strongerkentcommunities.org.uk. Okay, everyone. Lovely to meet you all. Bye.
Brilliant.
See you.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Every success. Bye.